Okay, so it's great to see everybody. Thanks again for making the time for this. So we've got, now Emily, are you teaching a course now?
No, I finished up, so I'm just here to help answer some questions.
You're amazing. Yeah. So if you haven't been in one of these groups with Emily before, she's actually got really great ideas and taught an in-person Flex 1 IttS course for the School of Arts and Humanities. Angie, how about you? Are you teaching now?
Not yet. I start September for spring.
Okay.
Wait a minute.
So,
Excuse me. Is this the Angie I've been hearing about?
Angie, no?
I apologize. But I've been hearing about Angie since Susanna came on board, and I was like, wait a minute. Is this the key person I've been hearing about? It's nice to meet you. My apologies for interrupting. I just got so excited.
No worries.
You have met the Angie.
The Angie.
Awesome. And then I know Frances has been teaching the course. So, because you've been in touch with me. So let's start with you. How is it going? What questions do you have?
I'm teaching an asynchronous course.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's a little bit of a challenge because I really don't speak with them per se, but I have been using the discussion board. I've been, the Waymaker has been amazing. When somebody needs a little extra help, I do check my grades periodically. Like I try to do it at least once a week to make sure that people are progressing. Kids don't seem to be having a little problem. I have one problem though, in that it's getting to the end of the year and people are slacking off. So I keep sending them encouraging announcements and emails like, come on, don't wait till the end, let's go, and hopefully that'll help. But it's been, it's been more an understanding of trying to get the mechanics down, which, we're getting there. We're in good shape now. I feel better about it.
Good. Have you had any students who just haven't participated at all?
Well, yes, I have I actually even sent you an email. I did have people that never showed up, and I made a SAGE referral to several people. And I think the SAGE, just by way of a tangent, I think the SAGE program is amazing because they contacted the different people that I listed. Some of them had to drop the course. Some of them kind of, had to get on track, a little reminder. And, and some of them just disappeared. There's always a few in every semester where they just disappear. But it really helped to get the ones that were kind of marginal back on track. Good. So that was really good.
That's great. The fact that some of them were able to get back on track is a major win. You know, absolutely. Yeah. That's huge. Great. Right. Thanks for sharing that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Good. So I have a quick question.
Sure.
So I went through the training and I come on these calls, just so that I can hear what's happening and be prepared. But I want to be honest, like I forgot some of the things because we went, I didn't teach it last semester. I didn't touch the stuff. So is there some kind of recommendation of getting back in? I don't mind doing the courses or doing a mock course. Is that recommended just so that I am ready come next semester? Like I'm anxious about that piece. Like, okay, if I have any questions now is the time to ask it because I have bodies that will, students that will rely on me to know what I'm doing when it comes next semester. So is that a recommendation? Just go back on some of the older links that we had and just go through the, I don't know what you would call it, the tutorial of what we had?
Yeah, so all of the professional development that we did over the summer was captured on one of two sites. So there's the first video, the Waymaker training, is on Lumen Learning site. I've sent that link out a few times. I'm happy to do it again though, because I can compile them all in one place and send them all out so that someone like you in your position can work through each of those training sessions.
I would appreciate it. I mean, because I could find them, but if you did that all in one shot, this is the time for me to do it,
Sure.
Yeah. So that if I have any questions, I could say, oh my gosh, what does that mean? I think I'll remember, but.
Yeah, well, I mean, it really helps to have those tutorials, and then the rest of them, including the conversation groups, are all on my YouTube channel. So I'll put all of those links together and send them out to everybody. And then I think we'll definitely have a meeting, again, optional, in January, probably in like the second week of January once we're past the new year. And just to help anybody who wants a little refresher or who has any questions about the upcoming semester. There are, I believe, some of these sections scheduled for winter as well. I know that the School of Arts and Humanities has scheduled a few in winter, mostly in an effort to capture the students who kind of slipped through the cracks this fall. So
gotcha.
yeah, there'll be plenty of times. And Angie, I'm always happy to meet with you too if you ever want to work through something.
Yeah, I did ask when when I got offered, you know, officially of the official, and I said, could I, you know, could I audit a class or look at someone who's done it, because I've never done it, you know? And so the person that's doing it now in the School of Business is new at it also. So they seem to believe that it's not going to be a big thing to do, but I just feel how I always did, even when I'm advising students, that I have these students in the palm of my hand and I don't want to lead them astray. And I know how it is to have someone who appears that they don't know what they're doing, and you just feel like, you know, why did I pick that straw? You know, out of all the straws in the you know, in the barrel, why did I pick that one? So I just want to do a good job. So.
Well, and let me turn things over to my colleagues too, right? So Francis, you're teaching it now. Emily, you've taught it in the recent past. Do you have any advice for someone like Angie who is, you know, excited? Obviously, you're excited about it. I really appreciate that. You want to do a really good job. What advice would you give to Angie?
Well, honestly, I felt just like you. I was very uncomfortable, and I emailed and I talked to people, and I was nervous about it as well, because I don't want to feel like I don't know what I'm talking about if the student asks me a question. So I feel your pain. One thing that I did was I kept a week ahead of them. Like I would go through the class as they were going through it. Like I'm still doing that. You know, I'll read through it. I don't necessarily take the quizzes, but I want to make sure that I know what they're reading and what they're getting quizzed on, so that I don't feel like a doofus, you know.
I know
That's a great advice.
You take it so I don't know, like I just feel like these students are the first time that, or we would assume the first time that they're coming to college. So you want them to have a good experience and not say, you know what, I took that class with Miss Nelson and I'm done with college. I'm never taking it again. Like, I don't want that.
Turn anybody off like that.
I'm done. So
don't put too much pressure on yourself.
I know.
Yeah.
Retention is not something you have to worry about. If you're as kind right now and give off this warm feeling, you're not going to be the one that loses the student, I don't think.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely not.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Emily, how about
I
you?
feel like a little bit of honesty is good too, because I remember when I was in high school, I had a teacher that was just learning computers, and I took this computer class, and he got up and said, listen, I don't know much more than you. Let's learn it together. And it felt good. Like, it felt like, okay, he was enthusiastic, we were enthusiastic, and it was a good experience. So, you know, I admit it. If I don't know what I'm doing, I go, wow, I don't know how to do this. So I'll get back to you as soon as I get an answer.
Okay.
You know.
Thank you.
I think that's great advice. Yeah. I mean, we can acknowledge that this is the first year that we're doing this program, right? And we'd love to have
Everybody's
their
new
feedback.
at it.
You know, yeah, everybody's new at it. Yeah. How about you, Emily? What would you say?
I mean, I think you kind of nailed it there with that. It seemed to work really well with them. That transparency of like, we're figuring it out together, and sort of, I feel like I let them feel like they were in the driver's seat a lot of the time, where it was like, our conversations we're having right now, they're for you. If you have questions, if I say something you don't get, let's talk about it. Like, really getting that kind of vibe, because that was like the main function that the class really served. It seemed like they ended up getting really comfortable admitting that they didn't know things. So I think that's great advice if you start with kind of doing the same thing. And additionally, the whole like piloting thing and being like, we're new to this, it opened things up for their feedback, where I was like, you can tell me what you think is going well. You can tell me what isn't going well too, because you guys have such important voices right now for your peers to come after you. We're really figuring this out and your voices matter. So that sort of, I think, made that like added to the comfort that they had. And also, yeah, I definitely had to do the modules a few days before the class meetings, because then I went in knowing exactly what they read, because sometimes they'd have a very specific question where they'd be like, on the blah, blah, blah page of this certain one, and I didn't want to stand there and be like, oh. So I definitely had to do the modules ahead of time. And I think that you find, because you have obviously the experience that you will be talking about with them, as you read the modules, things come up that you're like, oh, that's a really good thing I should tell them about. So that's really what would happen for me.
Okay, I feel better. I do.
Yeah, good.
You'll be great. You'll be great.
I'm excited. I don't know if you guys know, but I'm the director of Liberty Partnership. So I have 4 high schools and 3 middle schools in Rockland County. So one of the reasons why I really wanted to do this course is so that I can talk to my seniors and juniors about what's to expect when they come here. So we're really, I'm under the umbrella of admissions. So, you know, part of Liberty Partnership is the community outreach, right? Because those are not our students yet. We're grooming them to finish high school, to go to college, with the expectation, or not expectation, but with the expectation that they'll come here, because they don't have to come to RCC. They can go to any college that they want. But hopefully, because we created a relationship with them, they're like, you know what, I already know RCC. I'm going to do my 2 years, take my liberal arts, you know, at RCC, and then go on to, you know, take my major, whatever that is, at a 4-year college. So I really wanted to, so this is twofold. I think I have a lot to offer, but I really want to get the lingo and the conversations and the dialogue of what we do to give to them, you know, so that it's just a continuation. When they come, they already know some of the lingo, because I'm going to be talking it, you know, when I'm speaking to them. So that's, I'm looking really, I'm excited about that piece.
That's great. Yeah. And that plays a really important role for sure. That partnership, those partnerships that you work to maintain. So I also wanted to sort of push a little bit more and ask Emily to clarify one thing that she did that I thought was really smart, and that I think we should all probably do in our classes, which is whether you are teaching asynchronously or synchronously or in person, as she was. Can you say a little bit more, Em, about how you posed questions to your students, right? Questions that you kind of thought that they should have. Can you sort of explain how that worked and what you got out of it?
Yeah, definitely. I meant to share them with you, so I totally forgot. So I can do that
Cool.
after. So if anyone wants to use them, that would be awesome. But
give me everything.
Yeah, I'm like, please take it all. So I was teaching in person, so it was nice for me to be able to just project things on the screen behind me. But and you'll see it was in Katie's suggested sort of time allotments for activities during class. I was like, okay, this chunk is going to be just for talking about what's on their mind about RCC, about the class, things like that. So I did use that time, but I found in the beginning that they really weren't using it. They kind of were like, I was like, okay, what questions do you have? And they were kind of just like,
none,
looking at each other, and they weren't being too responsive. Maybe they were nervous or they didn't know what to ask. So I started prompting them with questions that I would come up with as I did the modules. And sometimes they would be super related to the modules, like it would be right out of the module. If I found that it mentioned kind of a difficult concept and maybe didn't spend a lot of time on it, I would put that on the board. Or if it just made me think of something, like one of the ones that we had talked about a few meetings ago was, do you know what office hours are? And things like that they should know, or the difference between like a semester and a trimester. Do you know what grad school is? Do you know what a bachelor's is versus an associate's? These questions that some of them have, especially like first generation college students. So sometimes I would just prompt them with those questions So I could be like, do you want to pick from any of these, or do you have a different question? And I found the discussions got so much better because it showed them like, okay, I'm not an idiot if I ask that question. So a lot of times they would point to them and be like, actually, can you go over that? I'm not sure what it is.
That's amazing because, yeah, you're doing so much there, right? You're helping them feel less anxious about the questions they have. You're also cluing them into what question should they have. So if they didn't have that question, but they don't know the answer to that question, then they realize, oh, well, we better talk about that one. There's so much, but they still get to have control, right? They get to point and say, I want to talk about that one, so much good is going on there. And yeah, if you wouldn't mind sending them to me, I'll share that with everybody.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's the kind of thing where, Francis, you and I are teaching asynchronously right now. One thing I have learned this semester is that I really don't like teaching asynchronously. So I'm hoping never to do it again. But anyway, these questions that Emily came up with, they're the kind of questions we could seed in a discussion board, right? And then, that way that starts the conversation in a discussion board.
Right. That's amazing. That's amazing. Although even my online classes feel like asynchronous. I'm literally talking to a bunch of black rectangles.
Oh,
Yep.
Yeah, I know.
Very
But at least
difficult.
they're there.
I'm looking
Maybe.
forward to real life again.
I know. Sometimes I get kittens, I've noticed. Sometimes my students will share their felines. I'm like, this is great. Like, it's fine. If you want to put a kitten up there, I have no problem with that. I want to share one thing that I think sort of ties into this. I'm going to actually share my screen for just a couple minutes. I don't know if everybody realized this because it's something I didn't point out to our group back when we were doing the training. I apologize for scrolling up very quickly. It makes some people seasick, but this is the study plan, part of the study plan in module 4, which is about learning styles and strategies. And, this is just one of the texts, right? And, it has these learning objectives, which are great. And then it has the text itself. And I found this particular text to be very useful here. This idea that students should be spending at least 2 hours to every 1 hour in the class on their homework. So if they're in class for 3 hours a week, they should be spending at least 6 hours studying for that class and completing work for that class. When I told students that, when I reminded them that their book said that, sometimes they were still surprised. And then we did like an actual activity, and I've shared that activity with you all. Happy to share it again if you missed it. But the activity was to have them build a calendar. It's a Google Sheet, like a modifiable template, and they can build a calendar of all of their responsibilities each week: work, family time, taking care of siblings, studying for each class, being in each class, going to activities, going to church, whatever it is, right? And then they kind of see, okay, where is my free time? How am I structuring that free time? Do I need to make any changes? So this particular text I thought was very useful. But down at the bottom of every single text, there is something that you may not have seen, which is this. So it says, do you have an idea for improving the content? We'd love your input. And if you click on improve this page, you're actually taken to a text where you can basically suggest improvements. And this could be something, especially in a synchronous environment, that you would want to do with your students. So for example, earlier in the semester, Emily shared this really amazing kind of session with her students about the sexual assault and harassment text. And your students, they were mad about that text, right? They were angry about how the way in which it portrayed and talked about sexual harassment and assault. And, it didn't occur to me at the time to suggest this, but since doing some thinking about it, our book is an open educational resource, and Lumen wants to hear from us about how we think it should be changed. So you could actually go in with your students or empower your students to go in and make suggestions. And as you can see, if you go in here, you have suggesting power, right? So you can't change the text itself, but you can suggest changes and they can decide whether or not to use those or not. So I'll just pause there for a second. I don't know if anybody's tried this already, but it also is a pretty cool way to sort of show your students that they have more control maybe than they do over other textbooks.
I noticed that feature like very soon after we had that discussion actually, and I was like, did they just add this or have I been missing it the whole time? I noticed it maybe a module or two later. And I was like, oh, that would have been so useful. But I think I love your idea that I hadn't thought about too, where it's like it can become an activity with them. Because like you said, my students had particular feelings about that module. And I think if, you know, doing that with them and saying, what are your specific suggestions? I wrote them down in a note on my phone. I said, what are your suggestions? And I was like, I'll pass them along, which was still good. But doing the act of it, like with them, I think would have been really cool.
Yeah, and maybe it is something new that they implemented halfway through. It's possible. But yeah.
I was like, maybe I just missed it. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know,
I think that's great.
Yeah,
I do. I know about the study because I used to be a TRIO advisor. And so that's first generation college students. We always talked about, you know, they squeeze school into their work schedule. So they'll have work and then they fill it up quickly. And then you're like, okay, so then when do you study? And you wonder why you're having such a tough time. So for every hour, now I didn't know it was 1 to 3, but we used to say for every hour, you should have at least a minimum of an hour of study. So I'm glad that says 2 hours because I'll easily back that up with 2 hours. So I understand that piece. And the correction piece is good because it's an activity. I don't know if I'm doing asynchronous or synchronous yet. I know it's a Thursday, but I don't know if I don't know how.
Well, if it's 1 day a week, then it's got to be either synchronous or in person because an asynchronous class has
I don't mind.
no rules.
I know. So I don't mind. Either way, I don't mind. So.
Cool.
If I can ask, how did the students do in terms of, do you think that they felt overwhelmed at times because it was put into the 8 weeks, or did they handle the material fine? You know, I had a conversation with one dean who said that they got overwhelmed and that it was too much material. And I said, I was a little surprised to hear that. And I'm just curious if other people have heard or thought that as well.
I'm not going to answer this because I'm teaching the honor students. They were fine, but they're not a good benchmark for what our main population feels about something. So anybody else, like, so Emily and Francis, what has been your take on that, on the load that's on them? Do they feel overwhelmed or are they managing to keep up?
I don't know if they're overwhelmed or not, but they've all slowed down. So I'm assuming that they are a little overwhelmed, or they're not budgeting their time properly. Like I said, I'm noticing now and sending out more reminders to please move along because I don't want you to get stuck at the end of the end of the semester is only like a month or so away.
It's a month.
So I don't know. Hopefully they'll get it together.
Mine didn't seem to be, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
They may not be overwhelmed with this course, but they may be overwhelmed with their other courses. So this one kind of like takes the back seat, you know, just think about it. Those other courses that is twice a week or 3 times a week, you get behind in that, you don't have room for anything else, you know?
Right.
So that's probably what's happening.
Yeah, I would say probably that would, especially like you'd be feeling that if you started for Flex 2, it's probably like they're in the thick of their other classes and then they have to take on this new one. So I could imagine where that could have a bit of a conflict. Mine didn't seem to be too overwhelmed. There were a few of the modules that were very long that they'd come into class and be like, oh my God, that one was I think the health management one, if I'm remembering correctly, is like really long. And they were like, I remember one of the students saying like, are all of the modules just getting progressively longer? I was like, it looks that way, but they're not. So a couple of them stood out as particularly long and they would say something to me. The only other time that they did get a bit overwhelmed was with the focus to career reflection, which, I mean, Katie, you've pointed out in emails that people should introduce it earlier. So that was just a mistake I made. Because so many of them hadn't completed focus to career yet, that by the time I assigned it, they were like, wait, I have to do the assessment and the reflection. So definitely letting them know early, I think, would combat that problem.
Yeah, and it's such a great point. And I still hope, my hope, so what was supposed to happen is that they were supposed to do focus to career during onboarding, right? So they were supposed to be doing it over the summer when they applied to the college and they got their first letter and they were supposed to be doing this, and then they were going to talk to somebody in advisement. They were going to have those results already. What happened, in fact, was that none of that really happened. So the students came into our classes not having done Focus 2, when what we want, what everybody wants, all the offices want them to do it before they show up. So what I wonder is, you know, going forward, how can we make that reality happen, you know? And I think it'll require some coordination with advisement, and also, like you said, maybe just giving them a heads up relatively early as well, so in case they do fall through the cracks in Focus 2, they can start it right away in that first week when there isn't as much work to do. But yeah, I agree. That's something I think we all learned from the Focus 2 career part, which is, whoa, that was a lot if students had not actually done the assessments.
I actually took your advice, Katie, and sent them an email before class began, and it helped.
Okay, good.
Is that allowed here? I know at other schools it's not. You can't contact the students before classes start. So that's allowed here. So that's great.
Really?
If we get, we can, if we can get the, you know, a jump on it, that's great. I don't know, I'm new, but I'm not really new, but I'm kind of new. So, you know, this is the first I'm hearing of that. So that's a good thing.
I will say this, the course opens a week in advance to the students.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah, so that's built in. I know that's built in. So you know, that's not to say that your student population might change, right? It could change all the way through add drop, but you could reach out to those students beforehand. Hey, everybody, you know, here's what's on the deck. I hope also that, I know that Brian Gomez and the e-learning team made the course shells available to faculty way earlier than they normally are. And I hope that trend continues even after the pandemic, because I don't know about you all, but I found it really useful to be able to work that far in advance. So Angie, to your earlier point, you know, if the course shells are available by late December, early January, you know, then you can already be working to tailor it however you want. It will come pre-populated with almost everything that you need. So.
Gotcha. And I'm probably, as soon as it opens up, I'm like, Katie, now what? No, I'm just kidding.
That's okay. That's all right. Yeah. Anything else? Any other questions or things that went really well that you want to share techniques on, or concerns that you have, or anything?
My own personal Title V requirement is financial literacy, and I'm just curious as to how that lesson has gone with the students. If you've gotten there yet, I'm not sure.
Probably nobody's gotten there yet. Okay. I
Okay.
haven't gotten there yet, Francis. Have you gotten there yet? The financial unit? Yeah, it's later.
Okay.
But I will say, I made a point of showing, so there's a great video that Suzanne actually found that we put in every course in that module, and it's a video on credit card debt, and the analogy is just incredible. It's really well done, and it's sort of mind-blowing, and I made sure to show it to all of my synchronous classes that I had, and then we had a discussion about it. Emily, did you do that at all? Did you use that video?
Yeah, I did the video, and the you had like a worksheet there that was them figuring out how much it costs to like attend RCC and stuff.
Yeah.
And they did well with the class discussion. They were like, oh, okay, cool. But they came in complaining about the module. They were like, oh, that was definitely the worst one. But the class activities seemed to sort of save it. So I would say if they're annoyed by the module and it's not as fun for them, that's probably the one where we have to step in more to be like, hey, but this stuff can be important. So yeah, that took a little more effort during that class meeting.
Well, and I have to, oh, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I have the opposite. I'm in from the STEM class, and I've got a lot of future engineers, and all of the writing stuff they don't like, but the numbers, they're on it.
They might love that one then.
Right.
Yeah. You know, that module, it's very interesting. So the in-class activity that I did, which I guess you may have done as well, Em, is I actually sort of had like kind of a sneaky evil purpose there. But have you ever looked at RCC's fees?
It isn't that I haven't looked at them here, but isn't that earth shattering when you go in and you're like, holy
Totally.
mackerel, you talk about not transparent.
Mm-hmm. And so that's why I came up with that activity of like, how much does it actually cost somebody to take X number of credits, right? Because when you total up all those fees, it's pretty wild. And I said to them, I'm like, listen, every college is going to have fees. There's going to be a lot of hidden fees in your life on all kinds of things. Just make sure you're looking for them, right? Like we learned to do today. And if you don't like these fees, I'll tell you who to go talk to. You go talk to your student government, right? Go get involved in student government. They have the power to sort of, advocate for you. And so I think that does a number of things that I personally like. I understand if maybe some other constituencies on campus might not like them very much, but I also do think it's really important for us to sort of help our students understand where their money is going, and where what is allocated for that, because financial aid isn't covering the fees. So
yeah. And we unfortunately, I don't think I've found the right fit yet for our financial literacy coordinator, but we will be getting one. We're going to repost, and we'll help you out. Even next semester, I can dive in. That's my favorite section to teach if you need help. And we'll get you squared away and help you out with that financial literacy component. Please don't hesitate to reach out.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, there's I'm looking forward to more material being available. There, I know some colleges in their college success course have like adapted the game of life and like played it that way. I would love to do some more activities like that. Yeah.
Katie, I just sat through a seminar on how to do the game of life in a virtual environment. And it is something that if there's interest, we could definitely kick it off and do it. We would, I would obviously need some help from, and it's on my list for Susanna and Maggie and us to talk about, but if that is something that you think would be worthwhile, and maybe we can get some of the honor students or the peer mentors that we're going to be hiring to help us. They have about 65 different occupations that the students could choose from. Granted, the amounts might be a little bit different in terms of income, but I mean, really kind of amazing in terms of even just the chance cards, if you've never seen it. I do have the recording if you're interested in doing that for your class. I think it's a lot of work just to do for your class, though. I think we would need to have a bigger kind of
like event.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's amazing. It's a good exercise.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm glad you're looking into it. I think there's a lot of really interesting, things we can do. And
maybe schools can compete.
Oh, that'd be great. That we could maybe
find
out about that.
Love that.
That would be very cool. There's another, and Katie, I don't know if I mentioned it to you, but if there's, if you guys are struggling with the financial literacy component and also values, when I was teaching, I did a values inventory, and I gave them, we had an auction in class, and they got a set amount of money, and they had to figure out how they were going to allocate their money and whether or not something was enough value that they were willing to spend X amount of dollars. Mm-hmm. And then when they were out of their $5,000, I'm sorry, you're out. And it was very interesting because then they knew each other at that point in the semester, and they'd say, what do you mean? Why are you doing that? Why do you want to be popular? You could cure cancer if you just paid X amount of dollars, and so they got to see each other's values in terms of where they stood and what was important. Sometimes you saw the wheels turn, and they said, oh, maybe this isn't important. Where do I get the most bang for my buck?
Mm-hmm. That's a great game to play. And I think that would go really well with Focus 2 Career, because Focus 2 has a values assessment built into it.
I'm afraid to Focus 2 because I'm afraid it's going to tell me I'm in the wrong profession.
Oh, but okay. So that actually was super interesting. I had some students who got upset.
Really?
Yeah. One of them got upset because she was like, Focus 2 knows me really well, and I must be like really transparent and not interesting. And I was like, no. And then I had some other students who were like, my profession wasn't in this thing, and I want to be a vet, and I'm not going to let anything stop me. I'm like, yeah, you tell them, right? Focus 2 isn't like, it has no power over you, right? Like, So it was I found that they had some really kind of emotional responses to the software, but that they also found in the end that it was useful.
Yep.
That's what I sort of found. I'm curious, Emily, did you have the same thing? Because Francis maybe might not know yet, because you might not know that yet, because they have to go back to Focus 2 at the very end of the class and think about it again. And I think that's where I started to see people kind of really digging into it. But Emily, what was your experience there with Focus 2?
I definitely had the emotional responses for sure. A lot of them didn't like the assessment, but really liked the reflection. So that was with that first assignment, they were like, I really, really appreciated the reflection because I felt like the assessment didn't capture what I wanted it to, and I was able to really explain that in my reflection. So a lot of them appreciated that assignment. So most of their take on the assessment seemed to be like not too, that it wasn't too spot on. A couple of them were like, oh yeah, it got me pretty well. I had one student who it put him in what he currently does, but he was like, I don't want to do it. I want to do something else. I wasn't telling me to stay here. So, you know, some results that were correct, but I think they could have gotten more from it. So I'd be interested to see how I can maybe have them get more from it.
Yeah, it's so interesting, right? Because that is really, I am now curious, sort of to Angie's point about different schools. I'm actually curious to see if Focus 2 works better for students in some schools than it does for others. Like, I kind of wonder. I don't know.
How do you think we would measure that, Katie?
I don't know how we would measure it.
Yeah.
The thing is, we have access to every student who's taken the, Focus 2. We have access to their results. So we could sort of, do some focus groups, haha, pun intended, and see, right? Like, of these are some students who took it from the School of Arts and Humanities, and these are some students from the Business and Professional Studies School, and just see, like, is there some trend there? I don't know. I also had some really positive experiences where, for example, a student who is a business student actually said, oh, this software sort of mentioned, what was it, public relations. And I'm really curious now about public relations. Like, I'm going to look into that. And I was like, oh, good, right? Like, this is exactly what we wanted to have happen, But it is interesting to me that we're all sort of sensing a strong emotional response. That's neat to me. I don't know if that was expected.
I don't think I expected that. And I guess, and I told them ahead of time, I was like, this doesn't mean you have to be in this box. Of course, like, you can object to it, and that's the purpose of the reflection. Yeah. But some of them were just kind of like, I think they didn't feel seen properly, or so. I think it puts them in an identity thing where they're like, what about my values? And, so it can go really well when they see a response that's like, oh, okay, I like that. But it can go really not great if they don't agree with what they get.
Yeah, I love that. And that's where I think the teacher becomes the validator, right? That nobody tells you who you are except you, right? Mm-hmm. But for me, what I ended up doing is I spent an entire session. So, an hour and 15 minutes in one class and half of a session, because I had a 1 day a week class, in another, where all we did was go around and have them share their reflections. And it was great, because the more we did it, I think the more empowered they were to sort of object when they needed to. And to have other people being like, oh no, like, you do what you want, and it turned into a really supportive sort of therapeutic environment, just sharing with each other. So, yeah.
It's interesting that you said a vet too as an example before. I don't know if that's actually one that someone said.
It was, yeah.
Because one of my students, I don't think she specifically wanted to be a vet, but she was like, I want to do something with animals. And there were no results about animals. And I was like, interesting. I don't know if that's not part of Focus 2. Like, I would have to look into seeing if they have that. But she was like, she kind of took the whole thing as like, whatever. Because she was like, I didn't see anything about animals, and that's what I want to do. So I'd be interested to look further into that.
Yeah, I think it probably is an option, but you probably have to do some very specific things to get it, would be my guess. I mean, when I did it, I didn't actually get I got like an architecture professor. So at least I got professor, but I was like,
at least you got professor. I got like sports announcer or something.
Sports announcer?
Yeah.
What? That's wild.
I'm not taking it. This is why I'm not taking it.
Your hidden skill.
Yeah, it said sports TV/radio broadcaster or something like that. And I was like, I don't know how to watch sports. I don't know.
How about esports?
That could work. That could work.
Well, I have to say it is kind of funny, right? Because you know, and sharing that with them. I don't know if you shared that with your students. I shared it with my students. I was like, I didn't get my result. I love my job. Like, I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. And so don't you let this thing define you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And there might be a line that you could find of why it said what you want. So you might do presentations really well. So that's why it talked about, you know, a broadcaster, because you speak very well. You probably, you know, don't mind being in front of a camera. I don't know what the questions asked, but, you know, so maybe that's why it put it in that category. There might be a fine line that takes you through if you dig deep enough to say, oh, maybe that's why it said that. I love details. So they said I wanted to be an architect professor, but I love details of words, not details of,
You
know
don't
what I
want me
mean?
building anything or designing anything. You don't want that. Emily's seen me draw on the board in class. You do not want me doing blueprints. So no, but you know, I think one of the other important things about focus too is what happens at the end, right? So at the end of the semester, they have to do a personalized education plan. They have to go back to focus 2. And one of the things I didn't think I did very well, but my students were fine anyway. I think I could have done a better job of demonstrating to them how you can find any occupation in focus 2, even one that you didn't, you know, receive in your assessments. And then they have to use that occupation to do a few really important things, like, you know, sort of what is the forecast for like employability in your field? What's the salary range? And focus 2 has all that great data. So even if they didn't sort of get you, you can still go and engage with it in really important and meaningful ways. And I think I want to try to create a video that like leads students through that process. But it is really valuable at the end for them to, I think, like, you know, kind of think about what is my plan and what do I need to get there. Did your students find that useful, Emily, do you think?
That was the part that I feel like I might have done, like that I might do better in the future. Because they did the assignment, they did what they were supposed to do, most of them. But I felt like their answers were not very detailed, and I wanted to know more about what they were thinking. They would sort of just answer the question in a sentence and then go to the next one. And I feel like I would have gotten more if I prompted them to say more. I imagine with your honor students, it might typically be that they might say a little bit more, but I don't know if that's true. But mine were very like, I am only answering the question, I'm not elaborating. So I would like some elaboration, I think.
Yeah, and we can change the form too. So Angie, just so you know, it's a Google form that they have to fill out, and it's not meant to be particularly onerous. But I think, you know, maybe inviting a little bit more detail might be useful. Yeah, so we can always keep changing it for sure. Is there anything else anybody wants to ask or talk about, or, you know, volunteer as something that worked or anything?
Is the class, do you find yourself, even though you have the module, like going off the module and having just conversations about how the module is real world, you know, like putting real world into what they just learned? Or do you find that you just follow the module of how it's written and then you're off to the next one? You know, I'm definitely a narrator. You know, I definitely do too much talking, so I know I'm gonna have to stop with that. But you know, there's just so much information you just want to tell them.
Well, I personally tried really hard not to lecture.
Gotcha.
So what I did was, you know, the great thing about Waymaker is that, especially if you ask your students to come to class, let's say you're teaching synchronously, if you ask them to come to class, having, you know, done the study plan, they have to complete the study plan and maybe taken one quiz attempt, then you're actually going to see what they know and what they don't know. You're actually going to get a really clear indicator of the percentage of sort of successful answers in the quiz based on each tile in the study plan. And so you can even go and you can say, wow, I see a lot of people had trouble with this, so let's just focus on your questions about this for part. What I tried to do is, and these are in my lesson plans as well, I tried to do activities that supported the module. So it was kind of like almost like a flipped classroom where they're going through the content on their own, and then they're coming in with questions, and we're doing activities that sort of reinforce what they learned.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. That was my approach. I don't know. I think, Emily, it sounds like your approach was similar.
Yeah, it definitely was. I think there were some modules that I felt I had to do a lot more of bringing in the real world stuff, but those questions we talked about were really my way of doing that, so that I still wasn't lecturing them, but it was me guiding them to ask questions that I felt they should know things about. Because a lot of mine were doing the quizzes very last minute. And when I say last minute, I mean like probably when I was driving to campus. So whenever I did try to check that data, a lot of times
it wasn't there. Yeah.
So I kind of would just read the module and be like, okay, what do I think is important? And sometimes the module kind of covered a lot of things, or they would introduce a concept that I'm like, we got to go over that. But other times, specifically, and we've talked about it before, but the diversity inclusion module, I really had to step in there and include a lot of real world stuff that was not in the module. So there are certain ones where I felt like I was veering away, but it was on topic, of course, but it was just kind of like, I think you guys should really know these things. And the questions were really my way of doing that. Sometimes we get caught up on the question discussion. It would be like halfway through class and I'd be like, oh, all right. So but that was good because it was all on topic, important discussion.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, the social inclusion or social interaction and diversity module was written in 2016. So it had, it really was not well prepared to deal with, the events of the summer and obviously these past few years. And so they know that. Like I talked to one of the people, the person who sort of spearheaded the College Success Project at Lumen, and she's well aware that that module is desperately in need of an overhaul now. And, my hope is that, and this is something I'd love to explore further, but my hope is to try to get students involved in doing that work. What I did for that unit was I brought in, I did a check-in question that asked them to talk about their family's sort of heritage. To sort of get some interesting critical thinking going about, wow, this is a country made up of, people from all over the place. And then we watched a brief TED Talk about the literal cost of racism, which I shared with everybody during the semester. It was awesome. It was such a good talk and it really spurred some great conversation. So I tried to enrich that one extra much because, it was not enough. So.
It's amazing how when you say, oh, that was written in 2016 and we were going like, oh, okay. All right. It's a little dated.
Yeah, just a bit. I feel like I've aged 20 years.
I know. I know, it's a little dated.
Yeah.
That's the year that I graduated from RCC.
Oh my gosh.
Things have changed, haven't they?
A little bit.
You graduated in 2016 and you're already looking for PhD programs. You are on fire.
Well, thank you.
Absolutely. She's a total rock star.
Proud of you.
I had someone really great leading me along the way. So
so proud of you.
This is all you, Emily.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Wow. Good for you.
That was weird saying it out loud. I was like, oh my God. But anyways.
Wow.
I won't even say when I graduated.
You have so much to be proud of.
Mm-hmm.
So true.
But that's why I'm such a oh my God, RCC person, because it really changed things for me, in such a great way. So every time that I can be a part of something, I'm like, yes, please.
Tell me that. I'm always looking for people to help now that I'm trying to get this grant going and we've got people on staff.
Listen, I'm happy to help. I like what we do and I find it important and it impacted my life in a lot of ways. So I like to give that, back to people. So I like what we're doing.
It's an amazing gift. There's not a day that I come to work that I don't enjoy what I do. Because you really do get to touch the future.
You do.
You're changing.
And I worked in business for 19 years and liked it. But then I came here and the world just opened up. and I'm much older than probably all of y'all, but it just opened up. I was like, I should have been doing this forever.
Yeah, I actually I went and talked to current graduate students in the program where I got my PhD at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. It was on this past Friday, and they had a few alumni there from different, who had found different kinds of jobs. And I know as a grad student, I wasn't thinking about teaching community college. I was thinking about different kinds of jobs, and just sharing with them that, no, this is great work. Like, you can fall in love with this. You can really want this to be your life's work. And even when you're not really trained for it, even when you're not, sort of trained to think that way. It is, I agree. It's a very special place. RCC in specific, and community college work in general, I think, is so powerful. So,
Katie, what did you get your PhD in?
Oh, medieval English literature. Yeah.
Woo!
Yeah,
Which is what Emily is going to be getting
I'm
her
doing it too.
PhD in.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, I see the connection. Yep.
Oh, there's plenty of connection. For example, we know how to deal with plagues. We know how.
Oh, if you think for a second that I didn't take advantage of this pandemic during my 102 last semester, I was like, we're going to read some plague literature. And they were like, oh my God.
You're like, yes, this has happened before. And we did not have hospitals or drugs or, we had some. But
I had them read the intro to the Decameron, and they were like, oh my God.
Yeah.
But,
well, yeah, no, I was like, oh my God, I'm one of those crazy, aristocrats who is fleeing New York City. I was like, that is really bad. Like, I was like, I am doing what I made fun of the people in the Decameron for. Like, I'm out of here. Bye. Anyway, we're now having medieval jokes, but that's fine. So, my friends, I'll stop recording now, but thank you everybody for an awesome conversation. And if there's anything I can do to support you, obviously,